She found 10 men in black suits circling her father's tombstone. The mafia boss was paying a debt. The rain in Asheboro, Nevada, has a special kind of malice. It isn't the heavy, cleansing downpour of the coast. It's a cold, persistent drizzle that seeps into the bone, tasting of alkali dust and regret. It was just past 11 p.m. when I saw them, blurred shapes against the iron fence of St. Marlowe Cemetery. I was here for the anniversary, a thermos of lukewarm coffee, a single rain-soaked peony, and a long, quiet hour with my father, Elias Hale. It was our ritual, but tonight, the ritual was broken. 10 of them. 10 men in identical black suits, their shoulders dark with moisture, standing in a perfect, silent circle around my father's headstone. They moved with a synchronization that made my stomach tighten, a grim ballet in the mud. I crouched behind a weeping angel monument 2 rows down, the granite cold and slick beneath my fingers, my camera bag digging into my hip. They were not grieving. This was something else. One by one, each man stepped forward. Each placed a single white carnation at the base of the marble, then a gesture I couldn't place 2 fingers, index and middle, pressed hard against the chiseled edge of the stone, right above Elias's name, a quick, sharp tap, a mark of respect, a claim. After the last flower was placed, they stood motionless, a leader, broader than the rest, checked his watch, then as one, they bowed their heads, not a shallow nod, a full 30-second incline of absolute deference. My breath fogged in front of my face, trapped in the scarf I'd pulled up to my nose. My freelance instincts were screaming, but my body was frozen. Journalists chase stories. They don't usually find them waiting at a family grave. The 30 seconds expired. They straightened. The leader reached down and retrieved something from the wet grass at the foot of the grave, something I hadn't seen in place. It was a thick and cream-colored envelope sealed with dark red wax. He didn't open it. He simply tucked it into his breast pocket. One of the men produced a small, silver flask and a polished steel object, a chess piece, a knight. He poured a small amount of liquid over the knight, washing it, then handed it to the leader. The leader placed the knight reverently on the stone, beside the flowers, then turned. With that, it was over. No words, no weeping, just the squelch of expensive leather shoes on saturated earth as 9 of the men filed back toward a fleet of black cars idling just outside the gates. Engines hummed to life, low and powerful, and headlights cut through the mist, sweeping across the rows of the dead before turning onto the highway. But one car remained, a sedan, black as crude oil, its V8 engine thrumming a low, patient bass line under the hiss of the rain. And one man, he hadn't retrieved the envelope, he had been watching the others. He turned, not toward the car, but toward the cemetery, toward me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a small cage. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. He walked past my father's grave, his steps measured, unhurried. He stopped at the angel shielding me. I could smell the wool of his overcoat and a faint, clean scent of mint. He wasn't looking for me. He was waiting for me. He hated carnations. I said, my voice came out rough, scraping my own throat. The man didn't startle. He simply looked down at me, his face obscured by the deep shadow of the angel's wing. He preferred peonies, I know. But carnations are for respect. Peonies are for love. I'm not family. Miss Hale, I am a debtor. I pushed myself up, my knees aching from the cold stone. Now I could see him. He was younger than I expected, perhaps mid-30s, but his eyes were ancient. They were a flat, pale, ash gray, and they held no light, no warmth, no judgment, just observation. His black hair was cut short, precise. His face was all harsh angles, a strong jaw under dark stubble. He was built like a fighter, solid and contained, the black turtleneck visible under his coat fitting snugly across his chest. "Who are you?" I demanded, pulling my bag strap higher onto my shoulder. Silas Marchese. The name landed in the air with weight. His voice was a low rumble, an Italian-American cadence sanded smooth, like gravel tumbling in a deep river. Marchese, I knew the name. Everyone in Ashboro knew it, whispered it. The unions, the port, the new high-rise contracts, the parts of the city that ran on cash and shadows. You're trespassing, I said, stating the obvious. I am paying respects. By bringing a crew to my father's grave in the middle of the night with steel chess pieces and wax seals, I pointed at the envelope I'd seen the other man take. What was that A receipt? A message, Silas corrected calmly. A confirmation. The night was the collateral. The note inside said, "Debt settled." Signed SICM. Debt for what? My father was a high school history teacher. He didn't run with your kind. A flicker in those gray eyes. Not anger. Maybe pity. Your father was many things. Nora, a history teacher, yes, but on a night 22 years ago, he was also a witness. He saved my younger brother from a hit, stopped the bleeding, drove him to a clinic instead of the hospital. I was 19. Elias saved the only family I had left. The story hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. Elias Hale, my father, the man who obsessed over Civil War battlefields and made terrible puns, involved in a mob hit. I don't believe you, I whispered. I don't care. His bluntness was a slap. It's the truth. This was a life debt. I've been paying it since he passed. This visit was the final installment. My anger returned, hot and sharp, chasing out the cold. A final installment. You repay a life debt by staging bizarre, threatening theater at a man's grave. He took a step closer. The mint scent was stronger, mixed with the cold night air. I repay it, he said, his voice dropping, by protecting what he protected. And lately, that means protecting you. He reached into his coat. I flinched, my hand instinctively tightening on the strap of my heavy camera bag, ready to swing it. He paused, his hand halfway. He slowly retrieved a simple, heavy stock business card. Silas Marchese, CEO, Marchese Protective Holdings. Holdings, I scoffed. Taking the card, it was thick, edges sharp. That's what you're calling it now. It's a legitimate security firm, he said, ignoring the jibe. And you may need it. Your father's name came up this week. Not in my world, in yours. My blood went colder than the rain. What are you talking about? A fund, the Glass Harbor Fund. My people were tracking a money transfer, a large one, that moved through it 3 days ago. The authorization memo listed Elias Hale as a legacy consultant. That's impossible. He's been dead for 2 years. Which is why I'm here. Someone is using his name. And the kind of people who run Glass Harbor don't use a dead man's name by accident. They're either covering tracks or they're sending a message. Either way, it puts a target on anyone still connected to that name. Me. He meant me. Before I could process it, before I could ask another question, the world went black. Not a fade, a cut. The few tall, Victorian-style lamps lining the cemetery's main path clicked off simultaneously. The only light was the faint, watery gray glow from the city limits, miles away. The rain suddenly sounded deafening in the absolute dark. Silas, I whispered, taking an involuntary step back. I didn't see him move. I felt him, a sudden warmth, his hand clamping over my upper arm, his body moving between me and the headstone. Get down, he commanded, not a shout, but a blade of sound that cut through the night. And then I saw it, a pinprick of crimson, impossibly bright, painting the cheek of the weeping angel I had been hiding behind, a laser sight. Silas didn't pull me down. He pulled me sideways, using my own momentum to hurl us both off the path and into the deeper shadow of the massive granite angel. His body covered mine, his arm a rigid bar across my back, pushing me flat against the monument's base. The cold of the soaked earth bit through my jeans. Fuck crack! The sound was split, a soft, pressurized exhale, followed instantly by the sharp, angry impact of a high-velocity round. It struck the exact spot where Silas had been standing. A second later, it hit the angel's wing, right where my head had been. Stone shrapnel stung my cheek. He was heavy, a a solid, unmoving weight pinning me to the ground, his face pressed near my ear. I could feel the coiled tension in every muscle. "Nico," he bit out, his voice a low vibration against my skin. "South Ridge, suppressed, draw fire, East Gate, now." He was speaking into a mic I hadn't even seen. Another shot. Crack. This one hit my father's headstone, the sound a sickening violation. I squirmed, a raw sound of protest caught in my throat. "Stay still," he ordered. His other hand came up, cupping the back of my head, holding me firm against his chest as another chip of stone peppered his overcoat. I heard the V8 engine roar, not away but toward us. Tires spun in the mud, then the distinct, heavier reports of 2 answering shots from the darkness to our right. Silas shifted, moving his weight to let me breathe, but kept me covered. "The car is coming. When I say move, you run. Do not look back." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my forehead bumping his jaw. The sedan skidded to a stop on the path, its headlights off. The rear door flew open. "Move, Nora!" He was up in one fluid motion, pulling me with him. We ran, hunched low. For the 10 feet of open ground, the air thrummed with another shot, this one wild, striking the iron fence. I dove into the car, Silas landing half on top of me, slamming the door shut as the car rocketed backward, turning in a spray of mud and gravel before finding the main gate. As we sped away, my breath coming in ragged, painful gasps, I looked back. I could just make out the circle of white carnations, ghostly in the dark, and the fresh, white scar on my father's tombstone. I finally understood. Silas Marchese hadn't come to desecrate a grave. He had come to defend it. Those 10 men, their precise, military bow. It wasn't just ceremony. It was a changing of the guard, a public declaration of territory. And someone, somewhere in the rain-soaked Nevada night, had just answered back. The ride from St. Emarlo was a pressurized silence. The sedan was heavy, insulated, the windows thick enough to turn the sound of the rain into a distant hiss. Silas Marchese drove, his hands at 10 and 2, his profile rigid, those unnerving ash-gray eyes fixed on the wet ribbon of the highway. He hadn't said a word since he'd bundled me into the car. He dropped me 2 blocks from my building. "They know where you live," he said. It wasn't advice, it was a flat statement. "It's where my work is," I retorted, my hand on the door. His gaze flicked to me, cold and appraising. "Your work is why they're shooting at you. Stay with your friend, the data engineer, Maya Trent." My blood ran cold. He knew about Maya. Of course he knew. I got out without another word, slamming the heavy door. The car didn't speed off, it just merged with the sparse traffic, disappearing. I ignored his warning. My apartment was a fortress of my own making, and inside, it was the one thing my father had left me that mattered: his archive. I locked the deadbolt, threw the chain, and went straight to the hall closet, behind a false panel in the back, where I kept my own off-the-record files, were his 4 heavy banker's boxes. I'd gone through them after he died, but I'd been looking for a man, a father. I hadn't found one. I'd found receipts, teaching notes, and coded ledgers I didn't understand. Now, I wasn't looking for Elias Hale, the teacher. I was looking for the man Silas Marchese owed a life debt to. I hauled the boxes into my living room. I knew what Silas had said: Glass Harbor Fund, Aurelia Freight. I started digging. It was all there. My father's notebooks weren't filled with ramblings about the Albanian mob or the Italian syndicates that ran the casinos. He was tracking corporate structures. He was tracking logistics. Aurelia Freight was the spine, a shipping company that seemed to own hundreds of shell corporations. Glass Harbor Fund was the bank, an investment firm that moved money faster than a professional card shark. But the name that kept appearing, circled in my father's precise red ink, was one I'd never seen: WFCD Inland Node. I ran it through every search engine, every private database I had access to. Nothing. It didn't exist. Western Financial Crimes Directorate. It sounded official, imposing, but it was a ghost. A file folder, taped to the bottom of the third box, was stamped with the same name and a stylized eagle, marked Top Secret. The font was a fraction off, a classic government counterfeit. My father had been tracking a phantom. He wasn't just researching a story, he was mapping a shadow government that used corporate cutouts as its armor. I looked at the steel chest knight Silas's men had left on the grave. I'd pocketed it in the chaos, my fingers closing around it as Silas pulled me into the angel's shadow. It was heavy, solid. I called Maya. If I was the legs of our operation, Maya Trent was the brain, the signal, and the satellite. She was a data engineer who found firewalls amusing. "Nora, it's 2 a.m., she grumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "I'm sending you a picture. It's a chess piece. It was left on my father's grave." I sent the image. I heard her sit up in bed, the rustle of sheets, a few seconds of silence, just the rapid thack-thack-thack of her keyboard. "Nora," she said, her voice suddenly wide awake, sharp, "where is this exactly?" "On my desk. Why?" "Look at the base. Is it covered in felt?" I turned it over. The base was a smooth, dark plastic cap. No, hard plastic. "Pry it off." I used my pocket knife. The cap popped off, revealing not a hollow interior, but a small, embedded chip and metallic contact points. "It's a YubiKey," Maya breathed, an edge of awe in her voice. "A mechanical authentication key with an NFC chip, analog encryption, old school, beautiful. Hold it against the back of your phone. Right now." I did. My phone chimed once. A locked partition on my hard drive, one I hadn't even known existed, suddenly appeared. It was masked as an old system driver. I clicked it. It wasn't documents. It was music. My father's old digital jazz collection. "Steganography," Maya said, already anticipating. "The data isn't the file. It's hidden in the files. He's using the metadata. Look at the album names." I scrolled. Most were standard, kind of blue, time out. Then one stood out, an album by a defunct local trio. The title, Needle and Bone, District 12. "That's a record shop," I said, my heart starting to pound. "It's been derelict for a decade." "That's your map. Nora, go." "Wait," I said, noticing another file. It was just a string of jumbled code, labeled QR key. "What's this?" I heard Maya's keyboard rattle furiously. "It's a QR code, but the data is algorithmically scrambled. It's not just locked, it's time-locked." "Meaning what?" "Meaning the code is useless. It won't resolve, it won't decrypt, until a specific predetermined time. According to the embedded trigger, it unlocks at 2:17 a.m. The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. 2:17 a.m., the exact time, to the minute, that the Ashboro coroner had pronounced Elias Hale dead at the scene of his accident. District 12 was a ghost town after midnight, a graveyard of forgotten industry. The rain had picked up, turning the cobblestone streets into black mirrors. Needle and Bone was just a boarded-up storefront, its sign hanging by one rusty bolt. I checked the alley. The back door was heavy steel, the lock a modern deadbolt, no picking that. I scanned the frame. The bricks. My father wouldn't have set a lock he couldn't pass. I ran my fingers along the loose mortar of the window frame next to the door. A single brick shifted under my touch. Behind it was a small, waterproof case. Inside, a key. I had the door open in 5 seconds. The shop smelled of mildew, dust, and decaying paper. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating stacks of vinyl warped by time and damp. "You always did prefer the theatrical," a voice said from the shadows. My heart leaped into my throat. I snapped my flashlight beam toward the sound, my hand flying to the pepper spray on my belt. Silas Marchese was sitting on a stack of newspapers in the corner, perfectly dry. He hadn't followed me. He had been waiting for me. He had beaten me here by 30 seconds. How I whispered, my voice shaking with adrenaline. The night was the last piece of the puzzle. I knew what it was. I knew your father's habits, and I knew the time. He looked at his watch, a simple, elegant timepiece. 2:15 a.m. We have 2 minutes. He stood, not moving toward me, but toward the back office. He knew where he was going. I followed him. The office was ransacked, but one thing was left pristine on the desk, as if waiting. A single torn record sleeve for a jazz LP, the one from the music file. Taped inside the cardboard sleeve was a small, printed QR code. 2:16, Silas said quietly, his gaze on his watch, not the code. The silence was absolute, broken only by the drip of water from the ceiling. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I aimed my phone at the code. Nothing. "Wait for it," Silas murmured. The second hand on his watch swept toward the 12. As it hit, my phone chimed. The QR code resolved. A string of text appeared on my screen, a GPS coordinate, a locker number, and a single word, Aegis Corps. Before I could ask what it meant, a new sound shattered the night, the high-pitched whine of a heavy-duty engine, too close, and the crunch of tires on the alley's gravel. "Wall!" Silas barked, his voice changing from quiet observer to field commander. "Move away from the back wall, now." He didn't wait for me to obey. He grabbed the front of my jacket and hauled me sideways, throwing us both behind a towering metal shelf of records. We hit the floor just as the back wall of the shop exploded inward. A white, refrigerated truck, the Aurelia Freight logo stark on its side, smashed through the brick and plaster, plowing directly into the office we had just vacated. 2 men, dressed in black tactical armor, not suits, leaped from the cab, weapons raised, Aegis Corps. These weren't mafia thugs. This was professional, private security. One of them saw our movement and tossed a small canister. It landed on the floor and rolled, sparking a flashbang. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the blast, but it never came. I felt more than saw. Silas move. He shoved me down, flat against the floor, and then twisted his own body, placing himself between me and the grenade. He arched his back as it detonated, his heavy overcoat absorbing the worst of the concussive, blinding blast. It was a sound so loud it felt like a physical punch. He let out a low, guttural roar as the shockwave hit him, but he didn't fall. He was on his feet in an instant, dragging me up with him, side exit. Another operative was blocking the narrow hallway. He was raising his rifle, silhouetted by the flashing lights of the truck. There was no time to think. I reacted like a journalist. My camera was in my hand, my primary lens, a heavy 35mm. Extended. I didn't swing it. I didn't have to. The operative in the hall couldn't see the man coming up behind us, the first one from the truck, but I could. I caught the second man's reflection, distorted but clear, in the convex glass of my camera lens. "You're 6 reflected," I yelled. Silas didn't even look. He trusted my call. He shoved me toward the exit, then spun, planting his foot in the wall and launching a spinning back kick, his heel connected with the tactical vest of the man I'd seen in the reflection, sending him crashing back into the wreckage. We burst out into the side alley, the rain feeling like tiny needles on my superheated skin. My ears rang violently. Silas slammed the steel door, ramming a metal pipe through the handles, barricading it. He slumped against the brick wall, his breathing heavy, his face pale in the darkness. "They knew," I panted. "They knew the time lock. They knew we'd be here." "They're not tracking you." "Nora," he said, pushing off the wall. He cornered me, his hands planting on the brick on either side of my head. He was close, the heat rolling off him, smelling of ozone from the blast and that same cold mint. "They're tracking him. They're cleaning up his trail, and you just lit it up for them." "I'm not stopping," I said, defiant. "I know." His gray eyes were terrifyingly calm. "That's why this is no longer a payment. It's a negotiation. I am going to keep you alive. In exchange, you are going to listen to me for 72 hours. That's the deal. And if I say no, then Aegis Corps puts a bullet in your head before sunrise, and my debt to Elias is void. 72 hours. You do what I say. You go where I say. You speak when I say. Do you agree?" This was it, a choice between my autonomy and my life, between the story and becoming a footnote in it. I reached into my camera bag, my hand brushing the cold metal of my spare voice recorder. I pulled it out, held it up between us, and pressed the red button. The auric light glowed, illuminating the sharp planes of his face. "I agree," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. "With one condition." I placed the active recorder on the rain-slicked windowsill next to us. "It's on the record. Marchese, a 72 hours that's fully quotable. You keep me alive. I keep the truth. Deal." He looked at the small, glowing red light, then back to my eyes. A shadow of a smile, cold and sharp as a scalpel, touched his mouth. Deal. Silas Marchese's safe house was not a mountain fortress or a penthouse wrapped in bulletproof glass. It was a ghost, the lyric Orion Theater. Ivo Cade, a man with the lean, still build of a marathon runner and eyes that never left his mirrors, had driven us through a labyrinth of service tunnels under the city. We had surfaced inside a cavernous underground garage and walked through a damp-smelling passage that opened directly into the theater's orchestra pit. The place was a monument to Art Deco splendor, left to die. Gilded plasterwork flaked from the mezzanine, and the velvet seats were covered in dusty shrouds, looking like a congregation of the departed, but it was secure, and it had power. With the click of a breaker, a single, sharp spotlight cut through the gloom, hitting the center of the vast wooden stage. "This is where you'll stay," Silas said, his voice echoing slightly in the huge, empty space. He walked up the short steps onto the stage, the light catching the dust motes, his movement disturbed. He didn't invite me. He simply expected me to follow. I did. My voice recorder still clutched in my hand, still running. "This is your protective holding. This is neutral ground. No one knows I own it but the city's dead tax ledger." He stopped in the center of the spotlight, a lone actor. "Your problem isn't your locks. Nora, it's your awareness. You walk like a target." I bristled. "I walk like a journalist." "You walk like you're looking for the story. You're not looking for the threat." He gestured to the vast, dark auditorium. "Read this room for me. What do you see?" 1,000 places for someone to hide. "Wrong!" His voice was sharp, impatient, the voice of a teacher. "You see 1,000 places. I see 4 exits, 2 in the orchestra, 1 stage left, 1 stage right, leading to the loading bay. The mezzanine is a death trap, a bottleneck. The shadows on the wall move when the air vents kick in. The ones in the boxes don't. That means someone could be in the boxes." He took a step, and his leather-soled shoe made a distinct, solid thud on the stage. He took another step to the left, and the sound was higher. A thuk. "This section," he tapped the spot, "is a trap door. The boards are hollow. You can hear the difference. You hear that sound. You don't engage. You run. Observational survival. You look. You listen. You process before you move." He was deconstructing the world, turning it from a place of substance into a collection of signals, threats and escapes. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a harsh, modern sound in the analog silence. It was Maya, a video call. I answered, stepping just outside the main beam of the spotlight. Her face was a grainy, low-light image on my screen. "I'm in," she said, no preamble. I cracked the QR key. It was a hell of a key. "Nora, layered encryption, but your father, he was a creature of habit." The root password was the call number of a book on the Battle of Antietam. He checked out of the university library every single year. "What did you find?" "Maya." "I've got the file. It's a logistical route for a cold storage wallet. It shows 12 transfers over the last 6 months, moving massive amounts of cryptocurrency, and the route, Nora, every single transfer, every wallet. It originates from the same source Glass Harbor's central treasury." I looked at Silas. He had moved closer, his expression unreadable, listening. "Maya, the coordinates from the QR code," I said, my gaze locked on Silas. "Where do they lead?" "Dryline Wharf, a shipping depot, specifically Bay 6. Silas nodded, a small, grim acknowledgement. He'd known, or he'd guessed. "Thanks, Maya. Stay dark. I'll call you in 12 hours. I hung up, the silence of the theater rushing back in. "Aurelia Freight," I said to Silas. "That's their shipping arm." "Bay 6 isn't a drop point for people," and he said, moving out of the light and into the shadows of the wings. "It's a logistics hub. Glass Harbor isn't just a fund, it's a laundromat. Your father found the plumbing." "You seem to know a lot about them." "I know what I am not," he said, turning to face me. "There's a line. My line. The Marchese Code. We don't move narcotics. We don't traffic people. We don't bring violence to families or prey on the weak. Glass Harbor Aegis Corps. They don't have a line. They'll launder money from anyone, and they'll run security for the worst filth on the planet to do it." He paused, his gray eyes searching my face in the dim light. "That's the difference between a criminal and a monster." "And you're the criminal," I stated, not as an accusation, but as a clarification. "I am the one standing here," and he countered, "and you are the one who needs to learn how to stay alive. Your hands. Show me." "What?" "Your hands." I held them out. He took my right wrist, his grip firm, his fingers cool. "You think like a reporter, all offense. You have to think about defense. If they grab you here." He put a light pressure on my wrist. "What do you do?" "I knee him. I use my pepper spray." He's wearing armor. He's expecting the spray. He grabs your wrist. You don't pull away, you go with it. You turn your wrist into the lock, toward his thumb, like this. He guided my hand, rotating it sharply. Then you find the joint, you find the bone, and you break it. He was standing too close. The spotlight, which had been moved by someone I hadn't even seen, spilled from the stage, catching us in its periphery. I could feel the heat radiating from his chest, see the small, faded scar that cut through his left eyebrow. The air was charged, thick with the smell of old dust, his leather coat, and that sharp, clean scent of mint. He took my other hand, guiding me through the motion again. This time on him, he grabs, you turn. You find the weak point right there. He placed my thumb on the pressure point of his own wrist. "Now, push, hard." I pushed. He didn't even flinch, but he nodded. "Good. Again. Faster." I practiced the move, twisting my wrist out of his grip. He corrected my form, his hands on mine, his body shielding mine. At one point, he moved to adjust my balance, his hand splaying on my lower back, his other hand on my shoulder. We were chest to chest. I had to tilt my head back to look at him. We were barely breathing, or maybe we were breathing in the same rhythm. I could count the dark lashes ringing his pale eyes. The spotlight caught the side of his face, carving it from the shadow. A streak of that same light fell across the nape of my neck, a tangible warmth on my skin. My heart was hammering, a slow, heavy beat against his ribs. His gaze dropped from my eyes to my mouth. It stayed there for 1 second, 2. A whole universe of intention passed between us in that look. It was an admission, a confession, a question. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. His hand was still on my back, his thumb pressing lightly against my spine. The air between our lips was electric, a space of millimeters that felt as vast and as dangerous as the entire theater. He didn't kiss me. He broke the gaze first, stepping back. The connection snapped, leaving the air cold where he had been. "Again," he said, his voice a fraction rougher than before. We practiced for another 10 minutes, the silence broken only by the scuff of our shoes on the stage and his low commands. When we were done, 2 people had entered the stage, so quietly I hadn't heard them. A woman with dark, cropped hair pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes hidden behind blue light-blocking glasses, and a tall, broad-shouldered man who looked like he could chew through the stage rigging. "Ria Vescari, my head of tech," Silas said, nodding to the woman. "Boone Calder, operations." Ria nodded at me, her eyes already on the 3 holographic monitors she was setting up on a rolling cart. Boone just crossed his arms, looking at me like I was a piece of unsecured cargo. "Evocade is on transport," Silas continued. "That's the team. They answer to me. For the next 68 hours. You answer to them." Ria finally spoke, her voice crisp. Boss, Maya Trent's data dump from the QR code is solid. The map your father left, Miss Hale, it's not just a route, it's an inventory. Bay 6 is packed with legal pharmaceutical precursors, but the shipping manifests show they're being bought at a 1,000% markup, routing through shell clinics, and paid for with public health contracts. He wasn't just tracking money, he was tracking the source. He found the scam, I whispered, inflating the price of legal drugs, then laundering the profits back through the same fund that was supposed to be helping people. Silas watched me, his expression unreadable. He pulled a folded document from his coat pocket and a heavy fountain pen. He uncapped it and spread the paper on a dusty prop table. "This is a 3-point protective agreement," he said. "It's not a court document, it's a bond. One Marchese Holdings provides for your safety and sustenance. 2, you provide all relevant information discovered from Elias Hale's files. 3, no party will act unilaterally until the threat from Aegis Corps is neutralized." It was legally absurd, but it was, as he said, a bond, a promise of honor. He signed his name, the black ink stark against the cream paper. He pushed it toward me. "My 72-hour deal, on paper, as you requested." I signed my name below his, Nora Hale. We stood in the wings, the single spotlight illuminating center stage, leaving us in a comfortable twilight. "One last question," I said, my voice low, the recorder in my pocket still running. "Why did he do it?" "My father. Why save your brother? Why save you?" Silas was quiet for a long time, his gaze fixed on the empty stage. "I asked him that, years later," he finally said, his voice so quiet I had to lean in. "I found him. I offered him money, a car, anything. He refused it all." He turned to look at me, and the shadows in the wings couldn't hide the memory in his eyes. He told me everyone deserves a second chance, but that a second chance wasn't a gift, it was a debt, and he made it a condition of his silence that I use mine to protect someone else, to stand in the way, he said. "The world needs more shields, Silas, not more swords. I've been paying that debt ever since, until tonight. I thought I was paying it to him. Now I know. I'm paying it to you." The Glass Harbor Fund's annual charity gala was not a party. It was a performance of virtue, held in the opulent 3-story atrium of the Baymore Hotel. It was a gathering of wolves dressed in silks and tuxedos, all celebrating how much they were giving back. Our objective was not the gala. It was the man headlining it, a fictional state attorney general, the head of a manufactured watchdog group called the Office of Civic Integrity. The OCI was Glass Harbor's most brilliant creation, a regulatory body they had built themselves, staffed with their own people, designed to publicly investigate and clear their own operations. Tonight, the OCI was the target, or rather, his phone was. "Rhea has the new credential," Silas said, his voice a low hum in my ear. We were in Evo's sedan, 2 blocks away. "You are Nora Hayes, freelance PR for the event. Your name is on the list. I am Liam Costas, an anonymous donor from out of state. I am your +1. He handed me a silk evening dress, the color of a deep burgundy, and a set of credentials. I changed in the back of the car, the leather cool against my skin. When I was done, I looked less like a journalist and more like bait. Silas, meanwhile, was transformed. His usual black turtleneck and severe overcoat were gone, replaced by a perfectly tailored tuxedo. It didn't soften him. It weaponized him, made his harsh angles look like expensive, brutalist architecture. "Stay close," he commanded, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back as we walked through the hotel's main doors. "Don't scan the crowd. Don't look for cameras. Look at me. You are here with me. No one else matters." It was the perfect cover. In a room full of people desperate to be seen, we were the anonymous, infatuated couple, interested only in each other. His hand on my back wasn't a caress. It was a command. It guided me through the crowd, his fingers pressing slightly to tell me to stop, to turn, to smile at a passing waiter. We saw our target, the Attorney General, holding court near the stage. He's the bottleneck for the data, Silas murmured, his lips close to my ear, his breath warm. Rhea needs his phone, but she needs it isolated. We need to get him to the elevators. How I whispered back. Maya is already in the hotel's system, he said. She's going to trigger a silent alert on his specific security details comms. A minor breach in the server room. He'll move to a secure line. That means the elevator. Rhea is in the maintenance shaft above the west elevator bank. We have to be ready when he moves. A slow song started to play. The crowd shifted. Silas put his other hand on my waist and turned me to face him. And in the meantime, he said, we blend. He pulled me onto the small, marble dance floor. My hand went to his shoulder, my fingers tense. His hand was a solid, warm weight on my back. Relax, he commanded softly. Breathe. You're a PR rep, not an operative. You're supposed to be enjoying this. I'm not built for this, I said through a tight smile. You're built for the truth. This is just a different kind of excavation. He pulled me closer. The distance between us collapsed. My body was flush against his, the hard lines of his tuxedo against the soft silk of my dress. He began to move, a slow, confident waltz that forced me to follow his lead. He used his body to shield me from the main security camera sweeping the floor. Camera at 2 o'clock, he murmured, his chin brushing my hair. It's on its sweep. Turn into me. Now. I turned my head, pressing my cheek against the lapel of his jacket. I could smell the faint, clean scent of his skin, the sharp mint and expensive wool. His hand on my back was impossibly warm, his thumb tracing a small, slow circle. I was acutely aware of every point of contact, my hand on his shoulder, his hand on my waist, our legs brushing as we moved. The Attorney General was laughing, his security detail relaxed. Maya, he's not moving, I whispered, my lips brushing Silas's jacket. He will, Silas replied. Patience. He spun me slowly, his gaze sweeping the room over my shoulder. His entire body went rigid for a fraction of a second. What? I asked. Don't look up. Rooftop, across the street, northeast corner, glass building. We have a sniper. My blood turned to ice. I stumbled. Silas held me fast, his grip tightening, pulling me closer until my feet were nearly on top of his. He's not ours, I breathed. No, he's Aegis Corps. He's Overwatch. Silas spoke into his cufflink. Boone. Rooftop, northeast. You see him? A voice crackled in my ear, a tiny receiver Silas had given me. It was Boone. Affirmative. I see the glint. He's support for the OCI man, not looking for us, but he's a problem. Just then, the Attorney General looked at his phone. His smile faltered. Maya's alert had landed. He nodded to his guard, who spoke into his wrist. He's moving, I said. Rhea, on your mark, Silas said. Boone, neutralize the sniper. Non-lethal. I don't want Aegis Corps knowing we're here. I have a solution. Boone's voice came back, calm as ice. There's a decorative mirror on the terrace below me. They're using a stage spotlight to illuminate the hotel logo. I can adjust it. The target was walking toward the elevator bank. Silas kept dancing me toward the edge of the floor, keeping us in his path. As the Attorney General passed, I stumbled again, bumping into a security guard. Oh, I'm so sorry, I gushed. Ma'am, the guard grunted, steadying me. In that second of distraction, Maya's clean breach hit. He's in the car, Maya's voice said in my ear. Rapid fire. Killing the feed. Stopping the elevator. Now, between floors 3 and 4. Rhea, you have 90 seconds, Silas ordered. I'm on the roof of the car. Rhea's voice was tight, breathless. Plugging the Stingray into the auxiliary panel. God, this is tight. Cloning. I'm cloning. Boone, status, Silas snapped. Adjusting the mirror, stand by. We were still on the dance floor, frozen in a half turn. I looked up at Silas. His gray eyes were distant, processing 1,000 inputs, and then a brilliant, blinding white light shot from the hotel's own terrace, hitting the rooftop across the street. The sniper's red laser sight, which I hadn't even seen, vanished. Target is blind, Boone reported, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. He's repositioning. He's off the board. 70%, Rhea panted. 80. He's got a lot of data. 90. Done. Data is streaming. I'm pulling the stingray. Maya, restart the car. I'm clear. Car is moving, Maya said. And we're out. Clean. Silas let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for the entire 90 seconds. He looked down at me. The tension that had held him rigid was still there, but his eyes were focused. On me. You lead, I whispered, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could feel it. I follow. It was a fake tango, but a very real pulse was pounding between us. He pulled me in for one last tight turn, a feint to cover our exit. His hip brushed mine, a brief, hard contact that sent a jolt straight up my spine, a spark in a tinder-dry room. Then he let me go, his hand on my back guiding me off the floor. We're leaving. We were in the parking garage, walking quickly toward the waiting sedan, when Rhea's voice came over the comm. Silas, you need to see this. I'm in his email. They're not just moving money. They're storing it, a master cold server. They're terrified of a breach, the location. It's codenamed Vault Vineyard. It's a wine cellar in Helios Valley. That's where they're keeping the primary crypto keys. We reached the car. Evo was in the driver's seat, the engine already humming. I reached for the back door. That's when I heard it, a high-pitched, electric whine, like a swarm of angry hornets. Drone, Silas yelled. I looked up. A black quad drone, no bigger than a dinner plate, was hovering at the garage exit, its red optical lens glowing. Silas didn't hesitate. He grabbed the front of my dress and threw me into the back seat, diving in right on top of me, his body a solid, crushing weight. Evo, go, go. He landed hard, shielding me completely. The world went white. A deafening whump rattled the concrete garage. The drone had detonated a flash bang. I was blind, my ears screaming, but I wasn't disoriented. In the split second before the blast, Silas had instinctively clamped his hands over my ears. His palms were a tight, solid seal, protecting me from the worst of the concussive shock. I was pinned under him, my face pressed into the shoulder of his tuxedo. The air was thick with the smell of burnt ozone and the dust of the old leather seats. I couldn't hear. I couldn't see. All I could feel was the frantic, heavy beat of his heart hammering against my own. We were breathing the same trapped, static-charged air. The car screamed, tires smoking. Evo didn't hit the brakes. He hit the accelerator. He swerved, the side of the sedan scraping a concrete pillar. I heard a metallic crunch as the drone, which had been in pursuit, was smashed between the pillar and our car. We burst out into the night, the city lights a painful, blurry smear. The ringing in my ears slowly faded to a dull roar. Silas pushed himself off me, his movements stiff. "You're okay?" he asked, his voice rough. I just nodded, my senses still reeling. The sedan took a sharp right turn, throwing me against the door. Silas's hand shot out, not to grab me, but to steady me. His hand planted firmly on my waist, just above my hip, holding me in place. The car straightened out. The immediate danger was past. His hand stayed there. It rested on my waist for one beat, two, a full second longer than was necessary. It wasn't a possessive grip. It was grounding, protective, a silent question. I looked down at his hand, at the long, strong fingers spread against the burgundy silk. He saw me looking. His gaze dropped to his own hand as if he just realized it was there. He pulled it back slowly, flexing his fingers, his expression unreadable in the flashing streetlights. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. And I didn't push his hand away. We were back at the Lyric Orion, the stage a glowing hub of holographic maps and data streams. Rhea was at her console, her face illuminated by the blue light. When the alert came in, it wasn't a system breach. It was a targeted video file, routed through 6 encrypted proxies, sent directly to my personal secure email. "Nora," Rhea said, her voice tight, "you need to see this." She patched it through to the main projector. The dusty stage curtain lit up, and my blood turned to ice. It was Maya. She was in a bare, concrete room, tied to a steel chair. Her face was bruised, her lips split, a single bare bulb hung over her head, a distorted voice, electronically altered, filled the theater. "Nora Hale, you have something that belongs to us, the Hale files. You have 12 hours to arrange a drop. One word of this to anyone, and your friend pays the price." The video cut. The theater was deathly quiet. Silas was moving before the image had faded. "Rhea, trace the origin. Boone, get the gear. Evo, route to the nearest industrial park. They'll want a neutral, open space for an exchange." He turned to me, his face a mask of cold, tactical resolve. "I'll make the trade. They want the files. They'll get me." "No," I said. My voice was so quiet, so devoid of the panic he expected, that it stopped him cold. "Nora," he said, his voice laced with a dangerous patience, "this is not a negotiation. Your friend's life is on the line." "Play it again, Rhea," I said, my eyes fixed on the empty curtain. Rhea replayed the video, Maya's terrified face, the concrete wall. "Again." He played it again. "What are you doing?" Silas demanded, his voice rising. "We are burning daylight." "She's fine," I said, my voice flat, cold. I walked up to the stage, pointing at the frozen image of Maya's face. Look behind her." On the wall, just over Maya's shoulder, was a cheap plastic analog clock. "It's a clock," Boone said, unimpressed. "So what?" "What time does it say, Boone?" I asked. He squinted. 4:30. Looks like 4:30. "Rhea," I said, never taking my eyes from the screen. "What's the timestamp on the video file?" Rhea's fingers tapped. "File was received at 04:15. That's 15 minutes ago. Timestamp on the creation of the file is 3:50 a.m., just under an hour ago." "The clock in the video is wrong," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "It's 40 minutes fast. Look at the second hand. It's sweeping. It's a working clock. It's just set to the wrong time." Silas stared at the screen, his mind clearly catching up, reevaluating. It could be broken, a dead battery. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Maya is a data engineer. She lives by internal chronometers. She would notice a broken clock in the room she's supposedly being held captive in. She would know I would notice it. She wouldn't let a detail like that slip, unless she planted it." I turned to face Silas. "It's a fake. It's a feint. She staged her own kidnapping." The implications of it settled over the room, heavy and dangerous. "Staged it why?" Silas bit out, the anger in his voice not at Maya, but at the deception, at the manipulation of his tactical response. "Because she needed to get inside," I said. "How do you get into a fortress like Aegiscore? You don't break in. You get delivered. She's not a hostage. Silas, she's cargo." As if summoned by the words, my phone, which Rhea had slaved to her system, chimed a new message, not a video, just 4 words. "UICA Kestrel, 2nd floor." Rhea's head snapped up. "UICA, United Interstate Crime Authority. It's another phantom agency, just like the WFCD, a shell corporation for a black ops budget. And Kestrel, it's a bird of prey. It's an access code. She's in the building, and she just gave us the key to the 2nd floor." Silas turned, his back to us, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He was vibrating with a cold, contained fury. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously soft. "She acted unilaterally. She endangered this entire operation. She put herself at risk, and she used you to do it." He turned to face me, his gray eyes like chips of ice. "This breaks our agreement. Nora, the 3rd clause, no party will act unilaterally." "She acted like a woman who was tired of waiting for permission," I shot back, stepping toward him. "She acted like a journalist's partner. She doesn't trust men in black suits. Silas, she doesn't know your codes or your rules. She trusts me, and she trusts the mission." The air between us was electric, a confrontation of 2 worlds. He held my gaze, the fury in his warring with something else, something I couldn't name. Finally, the rigid line of his jaw softened. Just a fraction, a small, dry, humorless smile. A brief quirk of his lip vanished as quickly as it came. Fair point, he conceded. Boss, Ria's voice cut through the tension, sharp and urgent. She's sending a data packet, a big one. She must have physical access to a terminal. Oh my God, it's the whole scam. She projected the new data. It wasn't just inflated drug prices. It was a perfect, horrifying circle. Project Tide Pool, I read aloud, my stomach twisting. Glass Harbor through a shell, buys controlling interest in a pharmaceutical manufacturer. They produce legal, high-strength painkillers. The OCI, their puppet agency, fast-tracks those painkillers for use in disaster relief zones. Aurelia freight ships the drugs, Boone picked up, his voice grim. And Glass Harbor's charity arm, the Disaster Relief Fund, buys those same drugs at a 10,000% markup, Ria finished. They're laundering money through the painkillers, using public contracts to do it. They're making a fortune off addiction and catastrophe. They're not just washing money, I said, the horror of it settling on me. They're creating the crisis, then selling the cure. My father, he wasn't just tracking money. He was tracking a plague. And they're about to burn the evidence, Ria said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. I'm in the OCI commissioner's calendar. He's scheduled a full system integrity purge for the Vault Vineyard servers. They're wiping the cold storage. When? Silas snapped. All business again? 72 hours, Ria said. In 72 hours, the entire ledger, every crypto key, every transaction will be gone. The mission was clear. The clock was ticking. Boone, Evo, prep for an immediate hard infiltration, Silas ordered, turning to the projected map of Helios Valley. Ria, you're on comms and breach support. Nora, you stay here. You'll be our data analyst. When Maya sends packets, you'll be the one to tell us what matters. No? The word hung in the air. Quiet, absolute. Everyone froze. Silas turned to face me, his expression unreadable. That was an order. Nora, not a request. I don't care, I said, walking past him, stepping directly into the middle of the projected map. My shadow fell across the digital rendering of the vault. My father's legacy is in that building. My best friend is in that building, risking her life. I am not sitting in a dark theater 50 miles away, listening to this on a headset. I'm done being protected. I'm going in. You are a civilian, Silas stated, his voice dropping to that lethally soft level. You are not trained for this. You are a liability. My job is to protect you. Your job is to pay your debt, I countered, my own voice rising, fueled by adrenaline and 2 years of suppressed grief. I was a liability at the cemetery when you threw me to the ground. I was a liability in the record shop when you shielded me from a flashbang. I am tired of being the thing you have to save. I am the reason this is happening. This is my fight. You want to repay Elias Hale. Then stop treating me like his fragile daughter and start treating me like your partner. I am going. The silence in the theater was so thick I could feel it pressing on my skin. We stood face to face, shadow to shadow, in the middle of the glowing map. The tension was a wire-pulled taut, vibrating between us. He stared at me, his ash-gray eyes searching mine. I saw the calculation, the tactical mind warring with the promise he'd made. I saw the anger, and I saw, for the first time, a flicker of raw respect. He finally gave a single, curt nod. The wire snapped. All right, nah, he said. The decision was made. We go down together. He stepped closer, out of the map, pulling me with him. His gaze was intense, his voice for me alone. But this is a new deal. My terms, when I give the signal for extraction, you take it, no hesitation. When I give the signal to engage, you engage, no argument. Understood. Understood, I said, my voice as steady as his. But I have a term, too. One eyebrow raised. I'm listening. You give the signals, but I'm the one who finds the data. It's my father's trail. I'll know it when I see it. and I am the one who gives the signal to publish. We go down together, but I pull the trigger on the story. He looked at me for a long, unblinking moment. A silent, binding contract passed between us. We go down, he confirmed, his voice a low gravel. I give the signal. You take the shot. Helios Valley was a ghost under a shroud of fog. The night was heavy, damp, and smelled of wet grapes and turned earth. The Vault Vineyard wasn't a quaint cellar. It was a concrete bunker sunk into the hillside, its entrance disguised by a row of ancient, non-productive vines. Aegis Corps isn't stupid, Ria's voice crackled in our ears from her mobile command van, parked 2 miles away. The main entrance is a kill box. Biometrics, pressure plates, the works. But your father's map noted the original drainage system. It's a 3-foot concrete pipe. You're going in wet. Silas, Boone, and I slid down a muddy embankment into a dark culvert. The water was only ankle deep, but it was freezing. Silas went first, a low-light emitter on his shoulder, casting a faint, ghostly green glow. Boone followed, carrying a heavy pack. I brought up the rear, my camera bag now waterproofed and holding the tools Ria had given me. The pipe was claustrophobic, the sound of our sloshing footsteps echoing unnaturally. After 100 yards, we hit a steel grate. Silas didn't try to cut it. He ran his fingers along the frame, found the hinges, and nodded to Boone. Boone used a small hydraulic spreader that silently, powerfully, popped the pins from their sockets. The grate swung open with a muffled groan. We were in. We emerged into a cavernous, chilled room. It was a cathedral of vice. In the center, rising 3 stories high, was a glass and steel wine tower, holding thousands of priceless bottles. But it was a facade. Running up the absolute center of the tower, hidden behind the racks, was the objective, a thick, armored conduit pulsing with a faint blue light, the cold servers. Ria, we're visual, Silas murmured. Watch your step, she replied instantly. The floor is live. It's a capacitance grid. They'll know the second your foot touches it. How do we cross? Boone asked. You don't. Look up. The maintenance gantry. Above us, a narrow steel catwalk ringed the room. Silas found the access ladder and tested it. He went up first, a silent shadow. I followed, Boone right behind me. We moved along the gantry, our boots silent on the grated metal. Stop, Ria commanded. The air is live, too. They're running an electric field between the gantry and the tower. Touch that railing, you'll set off every alarm from here to Ashboro. So how do we get to the tower? I whispered. We don't, Ria said. Look at the main valve system on the wall to your left. The tower is temperature controlled. I'm going to overload the thermal valve. It will force a 5-second shutdown of the electrical grid while the system reboots. When I say now, you have 5 seconds to cross. We stood poised at the edge of the gantry, where a small service bridge extended toward the tower. Boone, Silas said, the charges. I see them, Boone grunted. He pointed. Racks 3, 7, and 12. Soft-shaped charges. Not enough to kill anyone. Just enough to shatter the servers and flash fry the drives. They're rigged for a remote wipe. Stand by, Ria said. I'm pushing the surge. 3, 2, 1. Now. The blue glow of the servers died. The air lost its electric hum. Go, Silas snapped. He and Boone crossed the bridge in 2 seconds. I was right behind them. We hit the central platform of the tower just as the power hummed back to life. We were on the island, surrounded by an electric moat. Now what? I panted, my heart hammering. Your father's file mentioned a subsafe, Silas said, his eyes scanning the conduit. A manual override. He called it the hail seed. It's not in the servers. It's near them. He pointed up. There, that junction box. It's too clean. It was 20 feet above us, accessible only by a narrow vertical technician's ladder bolted to the tower's frame. I'm lightest, I said, already moving. Nora, wait. Silas grabbed my arm. His touch was firm. This is a technical climb, not a race. Adrenaline will make you shake. I can do this, I said, my voice tight. I know. He let go, but his eyes stayed on me. "Boone, brace the ladder." Boone set his weight against the metal rungs. I started to climb. My hands were slick with sweat. The rungs were cold, narrow. I'm halfway up. My foot slipped. I caught myself. A small gasp escaping my lips. My body pressed flat against the ladder. I was shaking. The adrenaline, the cold, the sheer height. I couldn't stop. "Nora?" Silas's voice came from directly below me. He was at the base of the ladder, his head tilted back, his gray eyes locked on mine. He wasn't reaching for me. He was anchoring me. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice low and steady, cutting through my panic. "Just me. Nothing else. Breathe. In." I dragged in a ragged breath. "Out." I let it out. "Again, control your breathing. Hold it, match mine." I watched him. I synced my breathing to the slow, steady rise and fall of his shoulders. The shaking in my legs subsided. The world narrowed to just the two of us. A column of held breath in the middle of a high-tech vault. "Go," he said. I went. I climbed the rest of the way. My movements sure. The junction box was a simple magnetic lock. Rhea had given me the bypass key. I slid it in, and the panel opened. Inside was a small, fireproof safe, and the keypad? "Rhea, it needs a code," I said into my mic. "It's not in the files," she said, her voice frantic. I looked at the 8-digit keypad, my father's obsession, the date of the Battle of Antietam, 09171862. The safe clicked open. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a single, solid-state hard drive. Etched on the casing was a single word, "Hail Seed." "I have it," I whispered, sliding it into my pocket. "Get down, now," Silas said. "We're out of time." I descended, and as my feet hit the platform, the entire tower shuddered. "What was that?" Boone yelled. "They know." Rhea's voice was sharp. "Aegis Corps just activated their internal security. They're not waiting for the purge. They're scrubbing the building. And they've deployed their canines." A heavy steel door slid open at the far end of the bunker. 4 machines, low-slung and metallic, trotted into the room. Robot dogs. They fanned out, their red optical sensors sweeping the room. "Rhea, the grid, we're trapped," I yelled. "I can't drop it again without locking us in." One of the machines locked onto us. It let out a piercing, synthetic bark and lowered its head, a multi-barreled weapon emerging from its chassis. "The wine," Silas roared. He pointed at the racks lining the tower. "Boone, the champagne bottom racks aim for the corks." Boone didn't question it. He unholstered his sidearm loaded with non-lethal rubber rounds and fired twice. The thick glass of 2 Magnum champagne bottles exploded. The effect was instantaneous. A massive cloud of pressurized, high-alcohol foam erupted from the tower, cascading down onto the floor. "Sensors," Silas yelled. "It'll blind their thermal and optics." The machines paused, confused, as the wave of cold, sticky foam hit them. Their sensors whined, unable to penetrate the sudden, chaotic thermal blanket. "Rhea, the bridge now," Silas yelled. "The grid is still live." "Do it." The bridge slammed back into the gantry. "You have 3 seconds before it arcs," Rhea screamed. We ran. We hit the gantry just as a blue bolt of electricity arced from the tower to the bridge, melting the connection point. We were back in the shadows, the machine still spinning in confusion below. "The pipe, move," Silas ordered. We ran, scrambling back into the drainage system, the alarms of the vault finally blaring behind us. A sound swallowed by the mud and concrete. We burst out into the night, gasping, covered in mud and freezing champagne, and the sky opened. A cold, driving storm swept into the valley, the fog turning into a torrential downpour. "We can't get to the van," Boone yelled over the wind. "They'll be sweeping the roads." "There," Silas pointed, "an old maintenance shed." We scrambled into the dark, wooden structure, slamming the door against the wind. It was dry, but freezing. The smell of old wood and rusted tools thick in the air. Boone went to the single window. his weapon drawn, watching the main road. I slid down the wall, my back hitting the rough planking. The hard drive in my pocket felt like a block of ice. And then the shaking started again. It wasn't adrenaline this time. It was the cold, the wet, the sheer bone-deep exhaustion. I couldn't stop. My teeth were chattering. I heard a heavy thud as Silas dropped his pack. He moved in the darkness, a large, solid shape. "You're shaking," he stated. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice trembling. He didn't argue. He sat down next to me, his shoulder brushing mine. I felt the heavy weight of his woolen overcoat as he draped it over me, pulling it tight around my shoulders. It smelled of him mint, ozone, and the cold night air. I huddled into the warmth, burying my face in the collar. "Thank you." He just nodded. We sat in silence for a long moment, the storm raging outside, the rain hammering on the thin, wooden roof. Boone was a statue at the window. A flash of lightning illuminated the shed, stark and white, freezing us in a tableau. In that brief, silent second, I saw his face. He was looking at me, his expression stripped of all its tactical coldness. It was just raw, intense. The thunder cracked, rattling the small building and plunging us back into darkness. His hand moved. It wasn't a calculated, protective gesture. It was hesitant, almost uncertain. His fingers brushed my cheek, cold from the rain. He cupped my jaw, his thumb tracing the line of my bone. "Nora," he whispered. His voice was a low vibration, barely audible over the storm. I didn't pull away. I leaned into his touch. The distance between us vanished. His mouth was on mine. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was long and certain and desperate. A release of every ounce of tension from the cemetery, the stage, the vault. It was the drowning man's first breath. His lips were firm, cold from the rain, but the mouth beneath was warm, demanding. My hands, which had been clutching the coat, found their way up, my fingers lacing in his hair, my other arm wrapping around his back, pulling him closer, anchoring myself to him. His other hand came up, cradling the back of my neck, holding me to him as if I were the only solid thing in the storm. My skin prickled, goosebumps rising from the cold rain that still clung to my hair, but where our bodies touched, I was on fire. The contrast was electric. I could feel the hard, steady beat of his heart against my chest. Or maybe it was mine. I wasn't thinking about the mission. I wasn't thinking about my father. I was just feeling the scrape of his stubble, the clean scent of his skin, the absolute, undeniable certainty of his touch. He deepened the kiss, his breathing quickening, matching mine. He whispered my name against my lips, a prayer or a curse, as his forehead pressed against mine. His fingers tangled with my own. His lips left mine, charting a path to my jaw, my ear, his breath hot against my cold skin. Then they found their way back, finding my mouth again in the dark. Softer this time, but no less certain. A sound cut through the roar of the storm, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Sirens. We broke apart, but not far. We were still breathing the same air, his hands still on my face, my hands on his chest. "They're not for us," Boone said from the window, his voice pulling us back to reality. "Local patrol, heading for the vault's main entrance. The alarm." Silas didn't look away from me. His gray eyes, even in the deep shadows, were a physical touch. He rested his forehead against mine. "When this is over," he said, his voice rough, "I don't want you to be an obligation." The words hit me harder than the flashbang. This man, whose entire world was built on debts, codes, and payments, was wiping the ledger clean. I raised my head, my eyes locking with his in the dim light. "I never was. We won the battle at the vault, but the war began the next morning." We were back at the Lyric Orion, the Hail Seed drive being decrypted by Rhea on a dozen isolated servers. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and the hum of high-end processors. I was sitting on the lip of the stage, my fingers still tingling from the memory of Silas's touch in the shed. "We have a problem," Rhea said, her voice flat. She didn't turn from her monitors. "A big one." She projected a new screen onto the main curtain. It wasn't data. It was a sleazy online tabloid, the Ashboro Insider. My face, a grainy candid from 6 months ago, was plastered on the front page. The headline was a sledgehammer. Data thief Nora Hale steals private medical records, links to organized crime figure Silas Marchese. "They're not just discrediting the data," I whispered, my stomach clenching. "They're discrediting the messenger, me." "It's the OCI," Silas said, stepping out of the shadows. He was on the phone, his voice a low, cold monotone. "Yes, I understand the optics. Make the call." He hung up and looked at me. "My legal counsel is on his way." The lawyer was a man named Karras, who looked like he'd been carved from a block of ice. He didn't greet me. He just set his briefcase down and addressed Silas. "The warrant for her arrest will be issued within 24 hours, citing Patriot Act and health privacy violations. They will seize her computers, her files, and this." He pointed at the Hale Seed drive. "The entire case will be compromised." "So we fight it," I said. Karras gave me a withering look. "You'll be buried in injunctions until 2030. There is one, and only one, immediate solution." He looked back at Silas. "Spousal privilege, you get married, today, a contract, her files, her research, become privileged communication between husband and wife. They can't force her to testify. They can't seize the drive if it's co-owned in a marital trust. It's the only move." The room went silent. I looked at Silas. He was watching me, his face impassive, waiting. He was actually considering it. This man, who had just admitted I was more than an obligation, was now weighing the tactical advantage of turning me into a legal shield. "No," I said. Karras sighed, exasperated. "Miss Hale." "No." I stood up, my voice shaking with a sudden, cold fury. "I'm not a legal loophole. I'm a journalist. We don't win this by hiding behind a lie. We win by publishing the truth. I will not trade one kind of cage for another." I stared at Silas, daring him to challenge me. "I don't need fake armor. Silas, I need the story to be undeniable." He held my gaze, and the tactical coldness receded, replaced by that flicker of respect I'd seen in the vault. "She's right," he said to Karras. "It's off the table." "Then you're exposed," Karras shot back. "Then we change the battlefield," Silas said. He turned to me. "The theater is compromised. They know I'm here. They'll hit this place next, and they'll come in heavy. You can't be here." "I'm not leaving you," I said. "No, this isn't a negotiation." His voice was iron. "You're not a liability. Nora, you're the mission. If they get you, or that drive, this is all for nothing. Evo will take you to Rhea's loft. It's clean, isolated, off-grid. Boone will run counter-surveillance. I'll stay here. I'll be the decoy. I'll give them the target they want." This was the separation, the tactical, necessary split that felt like a physical tear. He walked me to the orchestra pit, to the dark passage that led to the garage. Evo was waiting, the sedan idling. We stopped in the doorway, the damp, cool air from the garage mixing with the dusty warmth of the theater. We were alone, just two shadows in a concrete frame. "This is the right move," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I know," I whispered. He didn't move. I didn't move. Then I stepped forward and his arms were around me, pulling me in. It wasn't the desperate rain-soaked kiss from the shed. It was something more profound. It was a long, silent, crushing embrace. A promise of return. I buried my face in his jacket, breathing him in. His hand gripped the back of my head, holding me, memorizing me. "Be smart," he murmured into my hair. "Be safe," I replied, my voice muffled. He held me for a long, aching moment. His eyes closed, then he let me go, his hands sliding from my back, his fingers lingering on my arms. He kept his eyes on mine as I got into the car, a silent, unbroken connection, until the heavy door shut between us. Ria's loft was a sterile, white box above a defunct print shop, packed with more processing power than a small country. Maya was there, not in person, but on a dozen screens, a digital ghost in the machine. "Okay," Maya said, her voice tinny. "The Hail Seed is a gold mine. Project Tide Pool is all here. But there's a problem. It's just data. It's a file. To a court. It's stolen property. We release this. OCI claims it's fabricated. We're a tabloid story. We need it to be evidence." "How?" I asked, pacing the small room. "It needs a digital signature," Ria said, pointing to a locked partition on the drive. "A cryptographic key. Without it, the file is inadmissible. With it, it becomes a legally certified last will and testament from the man who compiled it. We need Elias Hale's private key." My blood ran cold. His key, it would be on his laptop, his drives. The police seized all of that when he died. "I've checked," Maya said. "It's not on any of his known hardware. He must have kept it offline. A cold wallet, something he carried." I stopped pacing. I thought back to my father, his obsessions, his paranoia in those last few hours, his old battered film camera, a Leica M4. He was never without it. "It's not what he carried," I whispered. "It's what he left." "What?" Ria asked. "The Cedar Key Firefighter Memorial. His grandfather was a firefighter. He took me there a month before he died. He was carrying his Leica. He said, 'I always want to be able to see them.' He put a small, waterproof case under the memorial plaque. My hands were shaking. I thought it was sentiment. It wasn't. It was his camera. He buried his camera." "Aegis Corps will be watching his known locations," Ria said, her face grim. "Then I go alone," I said, grabbing my jacket. "I'm not a liability. I'm a ghost. They're not looking for me. They're looking for Silas." I went in at dusk. The memorial was a small, granite obelisk in a deserted park. I did a full circle, 2 blocks out. Just like Silas had taught me. I looked for the tells. A van parked in a no-parking zone. A man reading a newspaper that was 2 days old. I saw them, 2 of them, Aegis Corps. They were in a dark sedan parked across the street, using a thermal scope to scan the memorial. They were waiting for someone to get close. My heart hammered. I was alone. No Silas to pull me from the line of fire. I ducked into an alley, my mind racing. Observational survival. What had he taught me? Use the environment. I saw a utility box at the end of the alley. Humming, radiating heat. I saw a trash can. Inside, a discarded bag of chips lined with silver tinfoil. In my own bag, a small, convex makeup mirror. I had an idea. I stayed in the alley's thermal shadow. I ripped the tinfoil bag flat. I stuck it to the back of the convex mirror, creating a larger, reflective surface. I found a loose piece of wire. I crept to the edge of the alley, just out of their sight line. I held the mirror out, angling it, catching the thermal waves from the utility box. I reflected the heat signature onto the far side of the obelisk, moving it slowly, like a person crouching. "Got him," a voice crackled over a radio I was just close enough to hear. The sedan's doors opened. The 2 operatives moved, weapons low, stalking the false heat signature. I didn't run. I moved deliberately. I walked calmly, my back to them, to the front of the memorial. I knelt as if to read the plaque. My hand went under the stone, my fingers finding the cold metal latch of the pelican case. I had it. I stood up, slid the case into my bag, and walked away, melting into the evening foot traffic just as the operatives realized they'd been tricked. I didn't look back. When I got back to the loft, the news was on. The OCI had made its move. A warrant issued by the fictional 13th District Court and was out for the arrest of Silas Marchesi for economic terrorism and disruption of the state medical supply chain. My phone rang. It was Silas. His voice routed through Ria's secure line. "I'm fine," I said before he could ask. "I have it. I have the Leica." "I know," he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. "Good, because it's time." "What's wrong?" I asked. "Evo just found a leak," he said, his voice flat. "All business again. One of our encrypted comms has a slow data bleed. Pinging an external server. It's one of the team. I don't know who. We're compromised from the inside. A new, cold dread settled over me. I'm not running, Nora, he said. I'm not hiding. I'm ending this. I'm going to lure them all, Aegis Corps, the OCI, and our traitor, to one place. I'm going to finish this. Once and for all, it's time to pay the debt. Where, Silas, I asked, my hand tightening on the old, cold camera. Where it all began, he said. St. Marlowe Cemetery. I'm going back to your father's grave. I looked at the Leica in my hands, at the worn leather and cold steel. I looked at the Hail Seed drive on the table, and I understood. The grave, the 10 men, the Steel Knight, the final installment. My father hadn't just left clues. He hadn't just left a map. Rhea, I said, my voice hard. Silas is wrong. This isn't just about paying a debt. My father didn't build a trail. He built a trap, and we've all been walking right into it. The plan wasn't Silas's. It was my father's. Silas was just the executor. I was the key. We called it the Angel's Loop. It's a 3-pronged trap, I said, pacing Rhea's sterile loft. Maya's face was on a dozen monitors, patched in from her own remote safe house. My father built a feedback loop, and the angel statue at St. Marlowe is the pivot. Rhea nodded, her fingers flying. Phase 1 is the lure. Nora, you go live. I took a deep breath. I have a small encrypted podcast, City of Quiet Crimes. It's got a niche, but loyal. Following among whistleblowers. I'll broadcast. I won't release the Hail Seed drive. I'll just release the corporate map. The connection between Glass Harbor, OCI, and Aurelia Freight. I'll show the flow of money, but not the source of the data. It's enough to prove I know, and it will panic them. While you're live, Silas's voice cut in over the comms. He was already moving, preparing his own part of the trap. I'll use the compromised channel, the one our traitor is watching. I'll leak that I'm going to St. Marlowe to settle the final debt and destroy the original source files, which I'll claim are at the grave. They'll believe it. It's theatrical enough to be true. It's a pincer, Maya's voice crackled. Aegis Corps will come for the drive. OCI will come to silence Silas and seize the evidence to bury it. They'll deploy their internal TAC team. Sentinel-9, I said, the name tasting like ash. I'd read it in the OCI emails. They're not security. They're a cleanup crew. They're coming to burn the scene and everyone in it. Which brings us to Phase 2, Rhea said, holding up a small, spherical device. The eye. I'm going in first. Before any of you. That weeping angel statue is the highest point in the cemetery, with a full view. I'm installing this. A 360-degree, high-definition camera with a dedicated, encrypted cloud uplink. The second they step foot in that cemetery, they are live. The world just won't know it yet. And Phase 3, Maya said, her virtual face grim, is me. I'll be watching Rhea's feed. If I lose your signal, Nora or Rhea's, for more than 5 consecutive minutes, I activate a mirror. The entire Hail Seed drive, unredacted, goes to every major news outlet, law enforcement agency, and watchdog group on the planet. The dead man switch. On. We don't just trap them, I said, picking up the old Leica M4. We give them a choice. Surrender or become the biggest story of the decade. St. Marlowe Cemetery at midnight was a different creature than it had been in the rain. The storm had passed, leaving the air cold and sharp. A bright, 3/4 moon cast long, deep shadows from the tombstones. Rhea was already in place, a ghost among ghosts. I moved in from the east, keeping to the shadows. And then I saw them. They were not Aegis Corps. They were not OCI. 10 men in black suits. They arrived one by one, materializing from the fog, silent as the stones themselves. They were not at the grave. They were moving with that chilling, familiar precision, fanning out into the open field around my father's plot. I hit my comm. Silas, the suits are here. I know. His voice came back, calm and steady. They're not a threat, Nora. They're the shield. I watched, holding my breath. They formed a wide, perfect circle, each man taking a position. I realized what they were doing. They were standing on the sightlines. They were a human shield, blocking the sniper-friendly hills, the high points, the angles of attack from the road. They were a rosette of black wool, a living wall. I moved past them, my heart a cold knot in my chest. I felt their collective gaze, not on me, but on the darkness behind me. I was the safest I had ever been. I reached the grave. The wilted white carnations were a ghostly circle on the grass. I knelt, my fingers tracing the cold-cut letters of my father's name. "Okay, Dad," I whispered, pulling the Leica from my bag. "I'm here. Where did you hide it?" I opened the back of the camera. It was empty, just the film spool, the pressure plate. My stomach tightened. No, he wouldn't have made it this hard. I ran my fingers along the inside of the casing, feeling for a loose panel, a hidden switch. Nothing. I checked the base plate, twisted the film rewinder. Nothing. I looked again at the film compartment, the dark, velvety lining. It looked thick. I pressed my fingernail into the felt near the hinge. It didn't give. I pressed the other side. Click. A sound so small it was almost imaginary. A tiny, false panel, no bigger than a thumbnail, sprang open from the camera's body, a compartment I had never known existed. Inside, nestled in a cutout of dense foam, was a microdot, a tiny, transparent wafer, glinting like a tear in the moonlight. Elias Hale's private digital signature, the key. The tears came then, hot and fast, blurring the cemetery, but my hands were rock steady. "You magnificent, stubborn bastard," I whispered to the stone. I wiped my eyes on my sleeve and slotted the microdot into the portable reader Rhea had provided, connecting it to my laptop. The grief could wait, the justice could not. A low rumble. Headlights, not two, a dozen. They flooded the cemetery gates, black, armored vans, rolling in with terrifying silence. Sentinel 9. They deployed without a word, fanning out, their movements crisp, weapons low. They were forming a perimeter, a kill box. And then, a second set of vehicles, black sedans, Aegis Corps. They screeched to a halt behind the OCI vans. The two private armies faced off. A brief, tense standoff. Aegis Corps was here for the data. Sentinel 9 was here to erase it. "Nora, podcast, now," Silas's voice commanded in my ear. I took a deep breath, hid myself behind the angel, and hit go live. "This is Nora Hale." My voice, amplified just slightly by my comm, cut through the night. "And you are listening to City of Quiet Crimes. Tonight, we are not talking about the past. We are talking about the present. We are talking about a company called Glass Harbor." As my voice echoed, a figure stepped from the deepest shadows of a nearby mausoleum. Silas. He was immaculate in a dark suit, no overcoat. He walked calmly into the center of the trap, right to the foot of my father's grave. He was unarmed. His hands were open, visible at his sides. The commander of Sentinel 9, a man in full tactical armor, stepped forward, his rifle aimed at Silas's chest. "Silas Marchese," he barked. I knew his name from the OCI files. "Marcus Jarrett. By the authority of the 13th District Court, you are under arrest for economic terrorism." Silas just looked at him, his face illuminated by the cold moonlight. He was perfectly, unnervingly calm. "Hello? Marcus, a long way from your desk. Tell me, does your wife know you used the Glass Harbor Disaster Relief Fund to pay off your son's gambling debts in Reno?" Jarrett froze, his face, visible under his helmet, contorted with rage and pure animal panic. He knew. He knew we knew everything. "Smoke him," Jarrett roared. "Take him now." Canisters flew through the air, hissing as they landed around the grave, erupting in thick, choking smoke. The Sentinel 9 operatives moved in, a wall of black armor. But Silas didn't run. He didn't even flinch. He just spoke, his voice clear, amplified by the mic I knew he was wearing. "It's too late, Jarrett. What did you say, you son of a bitch? I said, it's too late. Silas pointed up to the top of the Weeping Angel, where Ria's 360-degree camera was just visible, its lens a tiny, glowing red eye in the smoke. You're on camera, a high-definition, 360-degree feed, uploading directly to an encrypted cloud. So is every one of your men. So is Aegis Corps. You are all live. He's bluffing, an Aegis Corps operative yelled. Am I? Silas's voice was ice. The trap isn't for me, Marcus. It was always for you. Nora, now. I stepped out from behind the Angel. My laptop was in my hands, the microdot reader connected, the Hail Seed drive mounted. Ria, key is in, I said into my comm. Authorizing. Ria's voice was tight. Matching. Signature confirmed. The Hail Seed is now a valid, authenticated, and legal document. It's evidence. Nora, it's real. Jarrett, I yelled. My voice didn't shake. It boomed. I've just authenticated the entire Hail Seed drive with my father's private key. Your stolen data just became his final, sworn testimony. I turned my laptop screen so they could all see it. The smoke swirled around the bright, glowing display. On it, a large, digital countdown. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 59 seconds. That, I called out, is a broadcast timer in 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That entire authenticated drive, Project Tidepool, your bank records, the OCI charter, all of it publishes to every major news outlet on the planet. The only thing that stops it is my hand on this keyboard. The dead man's switch is live. Aegis Corps, Sentinel-9, they all stopped. They were caught between Silas, the 10 silent suits, and me. Drop your weapons, I commanded, my voice ringing out over the graves of the dead. Or you're not just arrested, you're famous. The clock ticked. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. The countdown clock on my laptop screen was a screaming, digital heartbeat. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. The standoff shattered. It wasn't Sentinel-9 that moved. It was Aegis Corps. They had no intention of surrendering. They were a private army, and their only order was to erase the evidence. Jarrett's men were fumbling, caught between the law and their orders. Aegis Corps was not. West flank, they're flanking! Boone's voice roared in our ears, followed by the distinct thump, thump, thump of a non-lethal shotgun. They're pushing in from the tombs I'm pinned. Hold them, Boone! Silas yelled, pulling me down behind the wide, granite base of my father's headstone. Smoke was everywhere, a thick, acrid fog that burned the eyes and throat. The air filled with the sound of shouting and the high-pitched zot of rubber bullets ricocheting off stone. They're trying to get to the laptop, I yelled, shielding it with my body. They're trying to get to you, Silas corrected, his voice a low growl. He was scanning the fog, his body coiled. A figure burst through the smoke, not in the black armor of Aegis Corps, but in the blue windbreaker of the OCI. It was a man I'd seen standing next to Jarrett, a thin, frantic man with a face like a weasel. He wasn't an operator, he was the investigator, the legal counsel, the mole. He wasn't holding a gun, he was holding a short, folding knife, and his eyes were locked on the Leica, still connected to my laptop. The camera, he shrieked, lunging at me. Give me the camera. I didn't have time to think. I reacted. I didn't back away. I moved forward. The Leica was heavy in my hand, its vintage leather strap still looped around my wrist. As he lunged, I swung the camera in a short, brutal arc, the strap, thick and tough, wrapped around his wrist. I yanked back with all my weight. He screamed as his wrist twisted unnaturally. The knife clattered onto the damp grass. He scrambled for it, but Silas was on him, a black-clad shadow, sending him to the ground with a single, precise blow. Thwack! 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 The sound was sickening, like a baseball bat hitting a side of beef. A trio of Aegis Corps operatives on the ridge had opened up with a barrage of rubber slugs, aiming not at the OCI man, but at Silas. Silas roared, a sound of pure, sudden agony. He didn't fall. He threw himself sideways, his body covering mine, his back taking the full force of the salvo. He slammed into me, pushing us both flat against the tombstone. "Silas!" I screamed. He grunted, pushing himself up to a crouch, his body still a shield in front of me. His face was pale, slick with sweat in the moonlight. He tried to raise his arm, to check his back, and his hand was shaking. A violent, uncontrollable tremor from the pain and nerve impact. "Aye, boss log purge, they're doing it!" Maya's voice shrieked in our ears, high and terrified. "Jarrett just gave the order. OCI is wiping their servers remotely. The Hail Seed is the only copy left. They're burning everything." "Rhea," I yelled, my heart seizing. Silas's hand was still shaking. I grabbed it. His knuckles white, his fingers trembling. I grabbed his other hand, which was braced against the stone. I pulled both, hard, pressing his shaking fists to my chest, pinning them against my own frantic heartbeat. "Look at me," I said, my voice a low, fierce hiss that cut through the chaos. "Silas, look at me." His gray eyes, wide with pain and adrenaline, snapped to mine. The sounds of the fight, the shouting, the sirens, all of it faded to a dull roar. "No one is taking you from me," I breathed. The ice in his eyes broke. In that one, suspended half-second of pure, agonizing chaos, his gaze softened. He saw me. He wasn't a mafia boss or a debtor or a shield. He was just a man, and he was mine. "The Knight!" he choked out, his voice a raw rasp. "The Steel Knight! What was the number?" My mind raced, pulling the image from the cemetery, from the first night. It wasn't a number. It was a sequence, a code. "The number's on the base," Rhea's voice cut in. She was crawling through the smoke toward us, her own laptop in hand. I logged it, the night at the cemetery. It was an inventory number. I thought it was for the collateral. It's a key, a coordinate. 841889. She was at the headstone, her fingers flying over her keys, cross-referencing her own files with the Hail Seed data. It's not a file key. It's a mechanical key. Elias built a failsafe. It's in the grave. She scrambled to the base of the tombstone, pushing aside the dead carnations. She ran her fingers along the bottom edge of the granite. "There's a pin pad. Waterproof." She typed in the sequence, 841889. There was a heavy, pneumatic hiss, a rectangular section of the granite base, the part directly under Elias Hale's name, slid forward, revealing a dark, airtight metal compartment. Rhea pulled it open. Inside, safe from the damp and the mud, was a metal strongbox. She flipped the latches. It wasn't full of data drives. It was full of paper, original stock certificates, notarized affidavits, and a single old-fashioned micro-cassette recorder. "He kept hard copies," I whispered, a new wave of love and awe for my father washing over me. "He kept the originals." "Jarrett," Silas roared, rising to his full height, his left arm hanging useless, his suit jacket torn at the shoulder where the slugs had hit. "Your purge failed." Jarrett, who had been moving back toward his van, froze. He saw the box. He saw the papers. He saw his entire world evaporating. "No!" he screamed. Get that box, burn it all." Sentinel 9, loyal to their commander, turned and surged forward, raising their weapons, but Aegis Corps, seeing their payday about to be destroyed, surged from the flank to intercept them. The two private armies, allies minutes before, were now in open conflict, a chaotic mess of smoke, shouts, and sporadic, non-lethal fire. The clock on my laptop read 1 minute, 10 seconds. The chaos was a cover, but it wouldn't last. "I have to stop the upload," I said, my hand hovering over the enter key. "The hard copies are the real story. The drive is just the map." "No," Rhea said, her eyes wide. "He's not just purging the OCI logs, he's sending a wipeworm to the vault. He's trying to fry the Hail Seed drive remotely. We have to complete the authentication, or the drive corrupts we need." 20 more seconds. I looked at Silas. He looked at me. He understood. "Nora," he said, his voice calm again. All the pain, all the softness, locked behind the ice. "Turn on the feed, the public feed, now." My fingers flew. I hit the key sequence Maya had built. The private, 360-degree feed Rhea was recording was no longer private. "It's live," I said. "We're streaming, publicly." I grabbed the strongbox, shoving the papers and the tape recorder into my camera bag. Silas nodded once. He turned away from me and faced the chaotic, swirling melee of armor and smoke. He looked at Jarrett, who was huddled behind his van, screaming orders. He took a step, and then another, walking out from the protection of the headstone into the open, moonlit grass. He was a perfect target. Every weapon from both Aegis Corps and Sentinel-9 swiveled and aimed at him. "The debt," Silas's voice rang out, clear and cold, captured by every mic and broadcast to the world. "My debt to Elias Hale ends when she is breathing safely." He unbuttoned his suit jacket with his one good hand, holding it open, a gesture of pure, absolute defiance. "Come and get me." He drew every eye, every weapon, every ounce of hatred onto himself, a willing sacrifice. He was buying us our final 20 seconds. The world held its breath. The countdown on my screen hit 00:00. With a soft digital chime, the broadcast timer vanished, replaced by a single word, "sent." At that exact moment, every phone in the cemetery lit up with simultaneous alerts. The Aegis Corps operatives, the Sentinel-9 team, even Marcus Jarrett himself. Their faces, illuminated by the glow of their own screens, were a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. "It's done," Rhea whispered, her voice trembling. "The Hale seed is public. Every major newswire, every independent watchdog, it's out." A new set of alerts chimed. The Aegis Corps commander looked at his screen, his face draining of all color. "Stand down," he barked, his voice hollow. "Payment has been suspended. The contract is void. We're out. Pull back now." Aegis Corps didn't retreat. They dissolved. They melted back into the shadows. Their movements no longer tactical, just a desperate scramble to escape the light. Jarrett was staring at his own screen, his hands shaking. "No," he whispered. "No, this isn't... They can't..." "It's over, Marcus," I yelled, my voice echoing in the sudden quiet. On his screen, I could see the live feed, his own face, staring back at him, and the incoming message crawler at the bottom of the feed per emergency directive from the Western Financial Crimes Directorate. "All Sentinel-9 assets are to stand down. Your unit is suspended, pending internal investigation. All warrants from the 13th District Court are hereby nullified." The knot had been pulled, the trap was sprung, the public and the real law had just snapped shut. Jarrett's men looked at him, then at each other. They saw their faces on the live broadcast. They saw the warrants from the Phantom Court. They understood, one by one. They lowered their weapons. They stepped back, hands raised, moving away from their commander. It was over. The adrenaline that had held Silas up, the pure, defiant will, vanished. His body betrayed him. He staggered, his good hand flying to his chest as his legs buckled, the pain from his shoulder, from the brutal impact of the rubber slugs. Finally won. Silas. I didn't run. I vaulted. I cleared 2 rows of low headstones, my camera bag banging against my hip, the precious hard copy evidence inside. I reached him just as he started to fall, my shoulder catching him under his chest, my arm wrapping around his waist. "I've got you," I whispered, my voice rough, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "I'm here." He was heavy, a dead weight, his good arm coming up to wrap around my neck. He was gasping, the cold night air rattling in his lungs. I held him, my body braced against his, keeping us both upright in a graveyard full of ghosts. There was no audience. The 10 suits were a silent, stoic wall at the perimeter. Aegis Corps was gone. Sentinel-9 was in disarray. It was just us. He pressed his forehead against mine, his skin clammy and cold. We just stood there, swaying, holding each other up, breathing each other's air. It wasn't a kiss. It was more intimate. It was a shared breath, a promise kept, a silent acknowledgement that we had made it through the fire, together. Red and blue lights flooded the cemetery, cutting through the last of the smoke, the real police, the Ashboro Civic Marshal Service. They moved in, their presence a wave of calm, professional order. They secured the scene. They disarmed the remaining Sentinel-9 operatives. They took a panicked, babbling Marcus Jarrett into custody. An agent, a woman with tired eyes and a grim mouth, approached me. "Miss Hale," she said, "we've been monitoring your broadcast. We have a warrant for this entire site." She saw the open compartment in the grave. "What is that?" I stepped away from Silas, letting Boone, who had materialized from the shadows, take his weight. I reached into the compartment and pulled out the old micro-cassette recorder. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the night. It was tinny, old but unmistakable. He was interviewing someone, a panicked money man from years ago, laying out the first threads of the Glass Harbor conspiracy. The last sentence on the tape, his final note, was for me. "You protect the weak, Nora." His voice echoed over the stones. "You protect them, even if you're the last one who believes in it." The agent just stared at the recorder. "We'll need that," she said, her voice softer. "We'll need all of it." My comm buzzed. It was Rhea. "Nora, Maya's clear. She's out of the Aegis Corps building, and the WFCD just hit the Vault Vineyard. They have the servers. Glass Harbor's assets are frozen. And Aurelia Freight just had its license suspended, effective immediately. We got them. We got them all." I let out a breath I'd been holding for 2 years. Paramedics were trying to get Silas onto a gurney. He was resisting, his voice low and angry, demanding to walk. "Sir, you have multiple impact traumas. You need to come with us." "I'm not running," he bit out, shoving a paramedic's hand away. He saw me watching. He straightened, his face a mask of pain and iron will. He looked past me, at the WFCD agents who were now directing the local marshals. He walked straight toward them. "I'm Silas Marchese," he said, his voice carrying, "I'm turning myself in, conditionally." The lead agent, a man in a sharp federal suit, raised an eyebrow. "You don't get to set conditions, Mr. Marchese." "I do," Silas countered, his voice steady, despite the pain. "I have the entire operational ledger of Aegis Corps, names, targets, payment routes, everything. I will give it to you in exchange for limited immunity for my organization and a full restructuring of Marchese Protective Holdings. We're going legit. Witness protection, you need shields. I'm offering them." The agent stared at him for a long, calculating moment. "Get in the ambulance," he finally said. "We'll talk." I was in the ambulance with him, the doors shut, cutting out the chaos, leaving us in a world of quiet beeps and the smell of antiseptic. A paramedic was cutting his suit jacket off, revealing a landscape of black and purple bruises already forming on his shoulder and back. Silas never took his eyes off me. I reached out and took his good hand, his fingers, cold and stiff, laced with mine. There were no flowery promises, no vows of eternal love under the moonlight. It wasn't our way. "If you have to sign statements tomorrow, Silas," I said, my voice quiet, my grip tight. "If they bury you in paperwork and depositions, I'll be in the chair on the other side of the table. I'll be recording. I'm going to make sure the entire world sees the truth. I'm going to show them your second chance." He didn't speak. He just turned his hand over, his thumb brushing against my pulse, and he held on. 3 months later, the OCI was a footnote. Dissolved by executive order, Glass Harbor was a crater, its assets seized, its board indicted. I published my series, not a sensationalist hit piece, but a long, quiet, angry look at the political economy of pain, focused on the victims of the disaster relief scam and the policy loopholes that had let it happen. It won a Polk. Silas, in a move that shocked the legal system, cooperated fully. His testimony dismantled Aegis Corps. He received a suspended sentence and 5 years of strict probationary monitoring. Marchese Protective Holdings was dead. In its place, Haven Line Witness Services was born, a fully bonded, federally contracted company. The first thing Silas did as CEO was to publicly sign and frame the Marchese Code. We ended where we began. St. Marlowe Cemetery, this time at sunset. The sky was a blaze of orange and purple. The 10 suits were there. They stood in their silent, perfect circle, one by one. They stepped forward, each placing a single white carnation on the grave, each tapping the stone with 2 fingers. When they were done, they turned and looked at us. Silas, his arm now healed, his suit jacket replaced by a simple black coat, took my hand. We walked together into the center of the circle. I knelt at the stone. Silas stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder, a warm, solid presence. I took the small steel chest knife from my pocket. I placed it in the open, empty compartment my father had built into his own grave. Debt paid, I whispered. My voice for him and for my father, legacy kept. I slid the granite panel shut, sealing the night inside, a final silent tribute. I stood, turning into Silas. He didn't pull me into a desperate embrace. He just held me, his hands on my waist, my hands on his chest. It was a promise. Protection, not possession. Love, not atonement. He kissed me. A deep, slow, certain kiss, tasting of mint in the cool evening air. The 10 men bowed their heads, not to Elias, to us. The last light of the sun hit the weeping angel, and in the shadows, the tiny red light of Ria's camera, which had been recording it all, finally went dark. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to connect with all of you. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really want to support this channel and help this story be heard by more people, please hit that hype button. Your support means everything.